Hey, Richard. How are you this morning?
Hey, Steven, how you doing? How you doing?
Good. Hey, guess what I found on Facebook the other day?
What's that?
You gotta check this out.
Okay.
All right, I have a screenshot. This is a tree.
Wow.
So this is they call it a mechanical tree. And obviously we could read what's here, but essentially it sucks CO2 out of the air, and looks like it was invented by or built or manufactured by the University of Arizona. I have not fact checked that, but that's where I got this from, the screenshot. So stop sharing my screen. I brings us to the topic of direct capture technology, and I know there's a few things like that, but I wanted to focus on this tree because I thought it was really neat. I know I sent you a couple of these things the other day. So what'd you think of it? I know you haven't done a lot of reading, but what'd you think of the idea right out of the gate?
Yeah, I like it because it's a different alternative. Because like I said, I was doing research on the actual companies that actually do the engineering part of the carbon capture.
Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting. Yeah. There's different ways of capturing CO2 in the air to reduce emissions. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
I'm gonna share my screen again since
Okay.
we're talking about this thing. So that's how the damn thing works, right? So, and I thought this was pretty neat. Essentially, it uses no fans. There's no electricity involved except for its retraction process. So it's about 10 meters high, and it starts within 20 minutes capturing air. So as air just passes through it, it sucks the CO2 out of the air. That's all it does. So maybe put it in some place that has a little breeze or wind or something like that. But once it becomes super saturated, there's discs inside the device, and these pictures are illustrations. They are being manufactured, but the machine actually lowers itself down into its base, and then once that happens, this is where the electricity part comes in. It sucks the CO2 out of those discs, and then once it's all clean again, it pops back up and starts over. So I found out that this company, Carbon Collect, which I believe is in Dublin, is starting to market these to the European Union to try to suck CO2 out of the air. And I thought that was a really neat thing. And allegedly, they can suck, 100 times more CO2 out of the air than a regular tree.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty interesting because then it saves the footprints of having to plant all those trees to solve that problem. So
Being corrected 1,000 times faster than a real tree.
Yeah.
So it does. And I think that the technology has a lot of potential in cities where there's not a lot of trees.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, with all things that are new and innovative, there is a huge amount of controversy. So this Facebook post, although it was really neat, there was 500 some comments, and I'd say about 80% of them were negative. People saying plant more trees, stop doing urbanization, stop driving cars, and it went on and on and on to a plethora of just, barraging the technology. But obviously we aren't planting more trees.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing a great job. And I think that people forget that when they say we should, they're thinking that the world as a whole will do something.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't think about I don't know if we've ever had this conversation, but the Industrial Revolution, United States and Europe were way ahead. So the countries that are behind are just finally starting to use some of those processes. excuse me.
But sure.
And, they're now polluted. So like India, for example, if you go to Bangalore and you're looking towards, out your hotel room, it's just smog.
Mhm.
During COVID, you could actually see the mountains because no one was driving in cars for a while because they're all home. They could finally see, but like when everyone's driving the vehicles constantly in India, it's pure smog, kind of like LA is, or London was back in the day. So those countries haven't come around to say maybe we should do something better. So although I like the arguments, I think these are kind of great, could be great tools in those countries as people try to retune themselves and evolve into cleaner type activities and technology.
Yeah, we were talking earlier. I took it for granted that one of the CO2 projects that has been going on for since the 2000s is this CO2 that comes from those power plants that emit all the like smokestacks.
Mm-hmm.
They've been taking care of that, and I never noticed it because I've been in the Tampa Bay area here since the 90s, and I never thought about. I used to see in the background of downtown Tampa, they used to have these smokestacks that,
Mm-hmm.
power plants, and now I don't see them anymore. I'm like, something that they phase in this technology that you take for granted. You don't even think about it, but they've been doing that, for a long time. But there's a company called Climate Works that's been working with taking the CO2 out of the air, and there's
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 different technologies. One, like I said, one is planting trees, of course. The other one is to directly take it out of existing technology now that emits carbon, CO2, and then like I said, the one you're talking about now, and there's other companies working on it, like Climate Works, is that to actually take it directly out of the air
Mm-hmm.
and store it. And that's where the other controversy is. There's different ways to store it. So the way they're doing it now, I guess they're still, I don't know if they're still researching it or not, but they take the CO2 out of the air and they take that CO2 and use it as other energy,
Mm-hmm.
so steam or whatever directly. So whatever they're collecting, there's another company called Carbon Fix, and what they do is they take that energy and they either turn it into rocks or stones or some kind of solid, and they actually put it back into the ground where we got all the oil and coal in the first place. So there's space in there. And the most controversial one is taking the CO2, instead of being in the air, you just put it underground, and then
Right.
we don't know the effects that might have in the future. But it's I guess what these scientists are saying is it's better that the CO2 is back into the ground as opposed to just being in the air. So,
I just checked out this climate works site while you're chatting there, and what I found interesting, and I know we're talking about devices suck it out of the air, but ocean carbon dioxide removal, there's, it kind of goes to your point, carbon has been stored in other things like ice and snow, so like back when we had the dinosaur Jurassic era, it was super hot. There was a lot of CO2 in the air, then we had some of those ice ages. And when snow can capture that CO2 as it falls, locks it in. So as the ice melts, now we're re-releasing it back into the ocean, or we're releasing it back into the air, by a natural cause. It doesn't always have to come from our cars or our smokestacks. But to your point, storing it someplace. Back to my my mechanical tree. They claim they can store it in all kinds of other practical applications, or use it for other types of energy, which there's a lot of different practical applications for that. I hadn't gotten in that section, but one of them was concrete, storing it in concrete. Of course, concrete doesn't last, indefinitely. At least up north, it doesn't. Down here in the south, it does a little bit longer. But I'll see concrete with the salt and the snow and everything. It starts to break down. Of course, then we go back to the same thing. We're pulling it out of the air, storing it into something that's going to break down and re-release it. But I think that this goes back to our whole conversation we have about balance. And I can appreciate everyone complaining about how ugly these things are, or that they're going to be forests of these things sucking CO2 out of the air. And why not plant more trees? But if a machine can suck more CO2 out of the air faster than a tree, why not?
Especially 1,000 times. Yeah, that's
And we all know that we are, as humans, until we go and become truly interplanetary, fixing the problems here is pretty important, but we're not getting any smaller in population. We will always continue to grow at some speed. Maybe it could be slowed, but grow at some speed. So we do need more housing. We do need more place to live. We will have bigger cities. It's an inevitability challenge that we have to solve, cleaning our air. And these things would be great cities, because then we could be sucking the CO2 out of the source, versus having it in like Montana, for example, and having a forest of these things in a place that shouldn't have a forest of these things. They should be places that we could cut it down before it even gets to the upper atmosphere,
Interesting.
That's at least my opinion. And I know there's a lot of opinions around this topic.
And then you have the hardest part is the people who are, especially the young people I've talked to, that climate change people, they're into the natural kind of, put the ecosystem back where it is, that they're not embracing the technology that could help, that can speed that up. So, so so then, like I said, the only way to convince it is these companies and hopefully our future students is to actually do the experiment, and once you get it to work, you see that, then you have to, the proof is in the pudding. You have to actually show them, hey, this works. So
yeah, well, windmills work too. We've talked about that thing, but there's a lot of folks to feel that windmills are ugly. They kill birds, which I don't think's been proven. All those specific things. People, if they resist certain levels of change. And some change, yes, maybe we should go that direction, but other change might need to be necessary in order for us to expedite the challenge in hand. Especially some of these other countries that are growing in population and are polluting more than what, in our case, the United States is, although we contribute a lot to the global climate challenge. But
definitely,
this thing, essentially we talk about our circular city, right? Go back to that topic for a minute. It's a clean space, but you have to realize there's probably some form of emission over the period of time as it evolves. It doesn't just, we don't snap the finger and all of a sudden we have a circular city that's, utopian paradise of cleanliness and climate happiness. So, again, that discussion of how do you go from point A to point B, this could be one of those tools, that helps us get to that spot with the circular city, or helps us rebalance after, our things that occur in our storyline without giving away the storyline.
I guess there's the I'm basing the academy a little bit of there was a court justice back in the early 20th century named Brandeis, and the school is named after him too. And he had quoted this quote called "Laboratories of Democracy." We're talking about, instead of trying to save the planet and the world, make it this big thing. What can you do as an individual? What can you contribute? What's your ideas? Voice it out, And he talks about laboratory of laboratory of democracy, meaning that everyone's doing, like we just mentioned, all these companies are doing their little, not little, but they're trying to make changes and doing like little experiments to see which one works. And that's what we need to do. We need to have laboratory of experiments around, and that's what we're trying to do. And that's what we're, yeah. So that's what the circular city is based on. It's based on what that city, as an individual, as a bunch of individuals in that city, what they can do, which would be different from what they do in other cities and other countries. Talked about India and all that stuff. We need to, we need to have like a little mini competition of, who can solve, and it might not be just one idea. It might be several ideas at the same time that's all work. So,
yeah.
With the new word co-opetition, where you're having a competition, but we're working together, kind of thing. So,
There's the word of the day. What'd you call it?
I heard it on the internet. Co-opetition, where you're
co-opetition.
Yeah, where it's where it's an, I guess, yeah, what the young kids are saying now, that we're competing against each other, but we're trying to work together. So yeah.
I think that's a great word, because I mean, like I said, I mean, as you've been chatting, I looked up, I can share my screen again, this place. There's always multiple solutions for doing things. And there's this, I'm not quite sure because I didn't look it up, but this machine, moving air and sucking CO2 out of it, and that was one of the negative comments was, well, it takes a lot of power to suck CO2 out of the air. Well, this thing doesn't require electricity except for when it retracts and opens up, and even then that could be a solar based, type of scenario. So that's even lowering the footprint. But I think that we have to have multiple solutions, to solve our challenge. It's not every solution that comes out is the only solution. Like we have nuclear, solar, and wind and coal and natural gas for fuels, as an example, hydroelectric. A lot of those are green. Some of those are not, but we need all those. Maybe someday in the future, we won't have the nuclear power. It'll be something different, or the coal is slowly being eliminated, it could be used for other things. But, same thing with this, maybe we do need, a machine that sucks the air through, or these trees, so the different solutions definitely help give us a better option instead of having the same thing all the time, and it just improves and moves us forward as a race, to be better.
Definitely.
But as always, you can comment on our blog, because this will be posted on our blog now, and comment on YouTube. I love to hear your thoughts, positive and negative, because there's some controversy with this topic. That you think about this, about these mechanical trees. And as always, if you see a solution out there you like to share, please send it our way. You can drop us a line on our website and tell us what what that technology is, and we'll feature it on our podcast.
I feel like I always say, we set the platform where you guys get to tell the story. We want to hear from you guys, so let us know.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it. Interesting topic.
Thank you for watching our podcast. Subscribe to our channel. Let us know what you think and what you would like us to talk about next. Don't forget to check out our website at prefecturesp.com.